Hi, my name's Chris and welcome to my workshop. A couple years ago we bought this condo, and one of the things I gave up was what I had thought before was always a small workshop, as I had half of a two-stall garage in which I had my workshop set up. And since then I've changed my mind on what small is. This room is 13 foot from north to south, 12 foot 9 from east to west, which puts it at about 166 square foot. And yet I found that I'm actually able to do quite a bit in a very, very small space. So I want to share with you my workshop and some of the ideas I've come up with. And if you have any other ideas or comments or thoughts, I would love to hear them. Leave them in the comments below. And so we're going to take you on just a wall-by-wall kind of explanation of what goes on in my little workshop here. So here's the south wall, and up above there you'll see several of my different jigs and things like that that are just hung up there conveniently, in this corner trash can and my stool and things like that. I store my drill press there, can use it there if it's small work. If not, I bring it out and put it on the big bench underneath the scroll saw. The most important thing on this wall, however, is the dust extractor. And that's the thing that makes it, it just helps with my marriage a lot, because it does a great job of keeping the dust in the room. Now, the plans for that came from this book right here, Workshop Essentials, and I put a link in the comments below, and so you'll be able to find that if you want to build one. It does a great job. It has three 12 by 24 filters in it, two on the intake end, one on the exit end, and then a large squirrel cage fan inside. I use HEPA 12 or MERV 12 filters in the second and third stage, and I go with a really cheap filter in the first stage because that first one fills up incredibly fast. Does a great job. We don't get a lot of dust outside the room because it creates a draw through the door, and does a great job for me. So that's probably one of the best things I've got in this room. Now, moving on to the next wall, you may notice, however, that there are some older tools mixed in here. The three hand planes that are tongue and groove planes, and then also the old level there. Those belong to my great grandfather, and so I'm pretty proud to have those hung up in here as well. Storage for nuts and bolts and things like that. Hand tools, they're kind of organized, but not as well as they might be. And then again, the chalkboard that I use. On the north wall, we find lots and lots of storage. Picked up these three cabinets at a local supplier, and actually got those for $25 a piece. Feel pretty good about that. They were corner ones, made for an open corner up in upper cabinets. And so I've got these openings on each one of these things. And that's worked out pretty well to have some of my tools pretty handy. Of course, it does get dusty in there real fast, but it makes really quick access to things I need real quickly, like Band-Aids and things such as that. Down below, I mentioned in the intro that this is a Ron Paulk design bench. Some of you probably have this bench. You might recognize it. Brilliant design. I had it set up in my garage as a 8 foot by 4 foot bench, and when I got in here, obviously that wasn't going to work, so I added some 4x4s to bring it up and make it work. And so I still really like it. I like having the bench dog holes in the top, the open storage up and down, and I've done quite a few things to make it work, and we'll explain some of those things. Also put some Bora casters on it that allow me to pull it out when I need to. And we'll do some more talk about that. Lots of storage for some of the larger tools that I have, and most of those get pulled out and used in some way or another. In this corner is my router table, and I'll give more detail on that in a bit, but that's been a really good build. Up above, more storage, and this is router bits and things like that I use. This then onto the east wall, and here we have my track saw. Tracks are stored in the bag above, and then more pegboard. At least there's the understair storage. The Harbor Freight dust collector, which is okay. I'm probably going to have to make some of the modifications other people have made to it to have it work as well as I really would like it to work. If it wasn't for the dust extractor by the door, it'd be a whole lot worse in here. But it does an okay job, and I think after I had to make some modifications to do better. Underneath the stairs also there's some storage in the far back there for small pieces that I want to keep, and then compressor, which I rarely use anymore, and other storage under there as well. But by and large, that's it. And I do have more room for more clamps. One of the other things that, as we get into some of the details of this room that I failed to mention earlier, was also that this can be a paint area. You'll see hanging up here is a place where I can hang different things. And when I built my cabinets for upstairs and I painted all the doors, hung them from there, you'll see that there are some of these hooks in the ceiling as it goes around, and so I'll just hang up tarps around here on the floor, and then this becomes a paint booth. And there's also a line that runs across here that's used for hanging up different things as they dry, and also the control for my various things, such as that controls the dust collector, the dust extractor, and then also the lights underneath the cabinetry. So that's what that does. Next thing I'll just give you a quick rundown on is the workbench. I mentioned that's a Paulk design, and link in the comments below on that. But I've made this quite versatile. It does pull out, and so it can be in the middle of the room, so I can have a little more workspace, or easier to work with. But underneath, you'll find some of the bigger tools there. There is a sander, bench grinder, those things easily pull out. There's the lathe, which I'll show you the setup on that, spindle sander, miter saw, which I'll show the setup on that, and then the thickness planer as well. So we'll show you those here, what each one of those do and how that all fits on one bench. Well, I've pulled the bench out now, so it just gives me a little bit more room. It doesn't have to come out very far to be able to work with it, but it gives me just a little bit more room. And now the lathe is installed on here, and it's really quite simple, especially with, this is like an old Craftsman lathe, and it just simply has 3 mounting points for it, so that made it really easy. So I just put threaded inserts into it, and once it's on there, it is good and solid. This one also happens to have the copy crafter, which is stored up underneath the stairway, and so I've got holes drilled for that to mount as well, and so that makes putting the lathe up quite quick and easy. And now the bench is set up for the miter saw stand. It looks very different than what a lot of guys' miter saw stands would look like. and it doesn't have a lot of the conveniences of some of those very elaborate but very room-consuming stands. And so I've come up with a pretty good plan here. Now the bench has to pull out when using the miter saw, otherwise you don't get full extension on the height, and so that's one of the reasons why the bench has to pull out. But this little bit here, this little jig, is quite genius. I did not develop it. A guy in England came up with it, and I've put a link in the comments below for you to be able to follow that. But it's actually, he makes a pretty good case for why this is all the miter saw stand you need. And so this just simply clamps to my bench, can move around, and if you do need to make a positive stop, then this simply screws onto there. You square everything up, use your measurements from your bench. Again, not quite as convenient, but it certainly works. You can set up your positive stop there, and if you're cutting several things the same length, they all come out the same. And so it's a brilliant, easy little design, and highly recommend it, even if you do have some extra room. And so now here we are with the table saw setup, other than the fact that I haven't plugged it in and doesn't have a dust collector connected to it, but this is how it would work out. It gives me about 6 feet of in-feed, out-feed on either side of it, which works pretty well. Most of the stuff, if I have anything much larger than that, do my cut my large sheets and things down with a track saw outside, and so by the time I get it in here, it's down to a more manageable size. On the wall over there, of course, is my table saw sled. My blades and such are all kept on the pegboard, very handy and easy to get to. So that's the table saw setup. It is setting on a DeWalt roll-away stand, which is really handy for here in the small shop. And this is my pride and joy, the last thing I built here. And after several iterations, I think I've hit on a table, or a router table, that I really like. I'm using the Incra fence, which does a great job. Jessam router lift. I have a Bosch 1619 router motor underneath, and just does a beautiful job for me. The router table has 2 large drawers, 2 smaller drawers. They're all full of stuff. That's been really quite good. The cabinet also has this large dust collection area underneath, which didn't work out exactly as planned initially, like the decorative blue tape, which helps seal this whole thing up. And then the oak trim had to be put on because it was drawing too much air around it. Now that I've got it sealed up, it is just phenomenal dust collection. Really pulls a lot of air through it, and I have very little dust after I get done. So this is what it looks like inside, and you can see there's just a little bit of dust stuck in the corners after doing some job, but it really pulls it out of there. Nothing like blue tape to make things work well. On the back side, you'll see here there's a 4-inch port, which is your main draw, and then if I'm working with something where I can use the fence, also I have a blast door there that I hook a 2.5-inch hose between that and the fence, and open the blast gate, and it does just also there a beautiful job of pulling it out. Now this is all on casters that set it down on the floor. It's very stable and sits quite nicely for me. Easy to work with, and just a joy to use. And so that's it. That's my little shop. There are a couple things I'd like to say just as I'm wrapping up. Much of the things I have to do in here is inconvenient, but I can get the job done. Next project I'm going to be doing is going to be a TV surround. It'll have a credenza underneath the television. They'll be 5 foot long. On either side, there are going to be bookshelves that are 2 foot wide, and then a bridge across the top with more storage that'll tie the whole thing together. Big piece of furniture built in a tiny, tiny shop. And it'll be inconvenient, but it can be done. One of the inconveniences of this also is that you always have to think through every project. And, okay, I've got this tool out, what do I need to machine with this tool before I put it away and get the next thing out and go to the next step? Now, sometimes that just doesn't work. You have to do, bring tools out back and forth several times. But it does force you to think things through, and that's not all bad. In fact, it probably helps me not waste some material that I might do otherwise. So there it is, my tiny shop. I would love to hear comments from you and get ideas maybe on what I can do better, or if you saw something that was a glaring error that I could make better. I'd love to hear your comments. Thanks for watching. And thanks for being here to see my little shop.